All right, so let's preface this video by saying this is not going to be a political debate, at least on my end. I'm sure the comments section will be a very, very fun place to read, but I'm not a political person. I think Republicans and Democrats are all scumbags. I think they don't care about you. They only care about lining their pockets. It's one big club and you're not a part of it. They all laugh behind closed doors at people suffering and people being split down the middle on decisions, and then they have these people that end up getting political identities based on these politicians, and they make their whole self about them. It's all they consume themselves with, and it's very unhealthy in my opinion. But I do want to talk about this because obviously it's going to be a very interesting talking point, and that is Nintendo of America has decided to poke the bear of the US government and is suing the US government. Let me say that again. Nintendo of America is suing the US government. Now, I obviously want to talk about what they are suing for and kind of some of the things that I see within this that are a little bit strange, and then talk about what sort of impact that this could end up having, because I think if this lawsuit actually gains traction and Nintendo's able to do something, this will open up the door for other companies. But it's kind of weird when you actually take yourself out of the emotional aspect of I love the government or I hate the government, and you look at the actual facts of the matter. I think it becomes a bit more murky. So we're going to dive into this lawsuit. Obviously, it's very much in its infancy, but I do have a lot of things I want to say about it. First time on the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. So what is Nintendo suing the US government for? Well, they are suing them in the US Court of International Trade, basically saying that in 2025, there were import tariffs imposed by the current administration on goods coming from many foreign countries, which of course we talked about ad nauseum on this channel. What was the impact that those tariffs actually had and stuff like that. You know, to me, it's always going to be up for debate what part of it is actually needing to, you know, raise the price of something to make money versus just being greedy to appease your shareholders. It's a very nuanced discussion. Do tariffs play a role? Of course they do. How much of that role is actually played strictly by tariffs, though, is always going to be something that I will think deserves a little bit of scrutiny and a little bit of questions asked about it. And asking questions about things is not a bad thing inherently in and of itself. So Nintendo is basically saying that these tariffs were illegal and improperly implemented under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. So Nintendo's lawyers are basically saying that the executive orders imposed with these tariffs exceeded the president's authority under the law used to justify them. And of course, then you have to, you know, change things up in terms of your pricing and stuff like that, which is something I want people to keep in mind, because it's not like these tariffs went into play and then companies just ate it. Like, we did see price raises on stuff. You know, Nintendo themselves, before the launch of the Switch 2, changed up the prices of many accessories and stuff like that to offset the tariff costs. And they were very open about that, which, in my mind, could be potentially dangerous, because when you read kind of the next thing that is being said about this, it kind of murkies the waters a little bit, in my opinion. I'm not an economic expert, and spoiler alert, you probably aren't either if you're watching RGT85. But Nintendo goes on to say that they, because Nintendo imports their hardware and products into the US, it had to pay these duties as the importer of record, essentially saying that they were the importer that was bringing these products into the United States with these tariffs, thus having to pay the cost that were added on via these tariffs. Now, of course, the tariffs have changed. Like, you know, it was kind of a fluctuating thing. You know, last year's tariffs aren't today's tariffs. Today's prices aren't yesterday's prices, and tomorrow's prices aren't today's prices. But that is something to keep in mind with this, as far as, you know, what Nintendo is claiming versus, you know, the reality of the situation. But here's where things get very interesting for me as an outsider looking in, because they basically say that the lawsuit says that Nintendo was directly harmed because it had to pay those tariffs on importing products. And the company, Nintendo, is asking the court to refund the tariffs it paid plus interest. Now, what did we just talk about? We talked about Nintendo and pretty much every other company adjusting prices based on tariffs. It was a huge talking point for 2025. And of course, like I said previously, it's kind of like, well, how much of it is tariff related and how much of it is, you know, maybe a little bit greedy. You don't want your profits to be dwindling a bit. You want them to look strong for shareholders and stockholders and people that invest in your company. So Nintendo and pretty much every company did make changes and said, we're making these changes based on the tariffs. But now you're saying that you lost money on the imported products, or you had to pay higher tariffs on these imported products, well aware of what they were at whatever time it was. And now you want the court to refund the tariffs that you paid plus interest. So you want more from this. So basically they're trying to get a court ruling that the tariffs were illegal, recover all the tariff payments that Nintendo had made due to the orders around those times, plus interest. And then this, of course, would potentially set a precedent for other companies that had to do things with tariffs and changing their prices and stuff like that. I think my big hang up on this, well, really there's two hang ups on this for me personally, as an outsider looking in, just for the justification of this case. And I'm sure Nintendo has excellent lawyers. The government probably has excellent lawyers too, who'll be able to, know this stuff more so than you or I would, just on a basic level of, law knowledge. But if you change the prices of your products based on those tariffs, didn't you already account for that? Because you changed the price because you said, oh, well, it's going to cost us more to bring this in or to manufacture this or whatever. And now you're saying that, you still had harm done to your business based on those tariffs that you already adjusted your product pricing for to make up for that. It's not like Nintendo had like a terrible 2025 or anything like that. And, maybe they have information that they haven't presented in this case, to prove otherwise. And, I'm sure they've crunched the numbers and stuff like that. So I'm sure they have a very solid case. But here's the thing. You're going up against the U.S. government, dog. Like, I am of the mindset, I don't like to poke a bear that is much larger than me. I don't like dealing with the government, cops, IRS, any sort of three-letter agency I would rather not deal with. I don't want to hear from you. Leave me alone. I'm just doing my thing. This, to me, is going to kind of paint a target on Nintendo's back now because they decided that they are going to sue the U.S. government. And maybe they feel like this is a case that they can win and get restitution for and stuff like that, which, would be a positive thing. But you got to kind of wonder, like, the fallout from this. Like, you're painting a very large target with a regime that can be very reactive to things. You get what I'm saying here? Like, is it worth it at the end of the day? Is it worth it to not only, drag this out in court, but also create a target on your back? And, I guess it could be if the end result is positive for Nintendo, but there is that other side of the coin where it's kind of like, whoa, man, you're going up against a juggernaut here. You're going up against a big boy. But, as the last Mr. Big would say, boom, 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 boom. Take that shit to trial, bitch. Take that shit to trial, bitch. Take that shit to trial, bitch. Take that shit to trial. Boom, 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 boom. I'm going to play a clip of it because a lot of you are not on the last Mr. Big.
Get your 12 white folks and take that shit to trial, bitch. Y'all motherfuckers talking about giving me 20
That was the song when I was a delinquent teenager that, like me and the boys would have to go to court or something for something. and like we'd be in the car with like one of our parents. We'd put that on and get like real hyped up to sit around in, you know, the court waiting for them to call up our case. It was miserable, dude. You would go there sometimes at like 8 in the morning and they wouldn't see you until like 2, and you just had to sit in the courtroom and hear these other cases and stuff like that. It sucked, dude. But yeah, Nintendo said take that shit to trial, bitch, and they're going for it. And I, as an outsider, I am very curious to see how this plays out, and I have my popcorn ready. Let me know what you think of this in the comments section down below. If you know about as much as me about politics and tariffs and economic stuff like that, don't get into a fight with people. Like, it's just your opinion, just like this is my opinion on it. I'm sure there's not many government and economic experts watching RGT85, and if there are, I have to question why you're watching me. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.